¿Tienes que hacer algo aquí? Eso lo vas a estar grabando. Y también está. Y lo estoy transmitiendo también en. Podemos apagar la primera fila.
Don Luis. Don Luis. Don Luis Alfredo.
Sí, Samir.
Para...
Listo.
Me dicen ellos que ya para iniciar.
Listo, ya.
Ok.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome to this talk, Death by PowerPoint, with Professor Miguel Mendoza. Professor Miguel Mendoza teaches English for academic purposes at Universidad Central de Venezuela, specifically the School of Librarianship and Archaeology is?
No, just librarianship.
Okay, librarianship. Professor Mendoza has been part of different teacher training courses with consultants with the British Council Venezuela, Foreign Asesores, and other private and public institutions. Today, the presentation is basically about how to enhance and improve the way we present information with a resource that is as common and well-known as PowerPoint. But the fact is that we use PowerPoint all the time, and many times we really don't know how to use it. So that's why we organized this presentation. This is sponsored by the Secretariat of Education in Santiago de Cali and organized by Universidad del Valle with the Foreign Language Teaching Network in Cali. Thank you for coming. Professor Mendoza, welcome and thank you very much.
Well, hello, Carlos, and hello, everybody. Thanks a lot, Carlos, for the invitation. I think it's always interesting when teachers share with other teachers. And it is the third time, by the way, that I share information with Colombian teachers. The first time I remember it was in 2011. I visited Bogota to train teachers for the British Council. And then the second time was for this event called Policy Dialogues English for the Future. It was in Cartagena. And it was a really interesting event. And I participated in the English and New Technologies section. And I do remember interesting people participated there, like Gavin Dudney, Juan Garavito, Mariel Amez, and it was a wonderful experience. And this time it is going to be more interesting because it is the first time I give a presentation using this video conference mode. Most of the time I've participated in webinars locally and internationally, and also in face-to-face sessions. So thanks a lot, Carlos, for inviting me to share part of my afternoon with you all and sharing this information about designing and delivering presentations. So the name of the presentation is Death by PowerPoint. And in a minute, you're going to see why it is called Death by PowerPoint. But let me tell you a little bit how I organized the information that I'm going to share with you this afternoon. Number one, I'm going to give you an introduction. And the introduction, I think it's important to tell you why I'm giving you this presentation. I'm going to give you a personal reason, which I believe is important, and also more grounded reason, so you will understand why it is important to think about it. Then the second part is going to be tips. I'm going to give you some tips on how to design presentations, and then principles. Of course, this is a summary of a longer presentation. In fact, this is going to be part of a workshop that I'm going to give to my librarianship students next year. So it is going to be an in-depth presentation. So I'm going to give you a taste on the things that you have to consider when you are going to design a presentation. And finally, principles, what you should take into account before and during making a presentation. And I hope I'm going to share with you enough examples to illustrate a little bit what I'm going to be sharing with you. So please bear with me for an hour and something, right? I understand, Carlos, that I'm going to make the presentation, and towards the end of the presentation, or when I finish the presentation, participants are going to be asking questions. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, okay. So what happens, I'm asking you this, Carlos, and everybody, because this is a workshop, so more than a conference. So since it is going to be that way, if you can take notes while I'm talking, given the presentation, that's going to be really important. By the way, November is a busy month for me. Next week, I'm going to give 2 presentations for the university. So I would like to send you, Carlos, not today, but maybe 1 week or 2, a summary of this presentation so you can share this handout with your teachers, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's get down into business. So you are seeing there 2 handsome, cute children. The one on the right is me, the chubby one. And I was the other one on the left is my twin brothers. We are fraternal twin brothers, not identical twin brothers. And I was the one bitten by the art bug. Since I was a child, I was always attracted to the art, painting and music and dancing and all that stuff. And I am still a professional person, and I'm still attracted to what's related to the art. So that's one very important reason for me for being interested in designing presentations and delivering presentations, especially in the 21st century. But I'm going to give you a more grounded reason, a reason for you, academically speaking, pedagogically speaking, why you should be training yourself to design presentations. And also, it's going to be really important for you to learn to do that, because you're going to do the same with your students. So a grounded reason is this one up here. Have a look at this digital skills metro map, which, as you can see, it's a pretty small image for you to see exactly what I want to tell you. And but the thing is that I came across this map 2 days ago, and I decided to add it to the presentation because I believe it's important for everybody. So I'm going to click on this button, and I'm going to cross my fingers, and I hope you're going to see the digital map in a minute. This digital maps is a digital skills, is related to digital skills in higher education. So this digital skills metro map, let's wait a little bit because it's loading. Okay, it's right here. And as you can see, it looks like any metro map you're going to find for most countries. So here we're gonna find different lines for this metro map. And within these lines, we are going to find different skills that we need for the 21st century. You need them, and your students are going to need them. In the case of presentation, or designing presentations and all that, if we check out, for example, tools and technologies, we are going to find presentation skills right here. So presentation skills is a really important skills that you need to develop your students as well. In this same line, we are going to find file types. Knowing about file types is also important. That is, if it is a Word document, that doc. If it is an image, that JPEG or JPNG, and what the differences are. So that's going to be important when we are designing presentations. The same line, we have digital cameras, because one of the important things that I'm going to be telling you in these presentations is how you should use images for each of the presentations that you are going to make. But you can also create your very own presentations by using your digital cameras or smartphones. Another example of the skills that you need for making presentations in the 21st century, we are going to find it here find and use. On this line, we are going to find, for example, Creative Commons. Creative Commons is a very important notion when we are talking about copyrights. So you have to know about how you should respect the creation of someone else when you are designing a presentation. Searching is going to be important because you will have to search for images. How you are going to do that, especially for designing presentations. Also, in this same line, we are going to find digital copyright, and I'm going to be talking about it briefly, and that's going to be important for designing presentations. There is another one which I believe is also really important, which is this one over here, create and innovate. And right here, we're going to find accessible content. That's going to be important for you to consider. Using digital images right here, that's going to be important. Basic graphic designs, that's also going to be important for designing presentations. And also because here, you're going to find a skill that people have been talking about, which is design thinking. Have you heard about it, people? Have you heard about design thinking before? Yes or no?
No, we haven't.
Okay, you haven't. That's an interesting notion because generally when we are in the classroom, for some reason, we see the classroom as a factory where we are training our students the same way. And we are sort of creating one single product that is going to do something out there in society. So it's really important right now to see our students in a different way. We have to see our students as a group of people who are able to create. For some reason, and I think Ken Robinson is right, when he says that in education, we have killed creativity. We do not pay attention to creativity. And that's going to be an important, or it is an important aspect of education that we need to think of. And design thinking is going to help you to do that. In fact, if you think about it, if you use design thinking, your students are going to move from engaged to empowered. Your students are going to become problem solvers. Your students are going to become more curious. Your students are going to learn to work in groups. Your students are going to learn to view themselves as makers. They are going to learn how to learn the power of creative constraint. They are going to learn to become creative risk-takers. And that's an important skill in the 21st century, especially in a century where we are going to be competing not with people in our very own country, but with other people, other professionals abroad. So design thinking is a really important skill. And if you keep on checking out this map, we are going to find some other skills that we are going to need for designing presentations. So I'm going to go back to my presentation right here. And there is another reason. Another reason is this one over here. Knowledge of design and visual communication are highly valued these days. Uh-oh, problem. I hope, are you still listening to me?
Yes, completely.
Okay, great. So those two things are important, knowledge of design and visual communication, especially these days. And to do that, we need to become familiar with basic concepts of graphic design. You are not going to become experts, graphic designers, but it's important to get or to have basic notions about it. You're going to learn how to create better visuals, and that's really important these days, and how to communicate better in your presentations. That is moving from the traditional way of designing and delivering presentations to presentations that are going to be related to different times we're living in the 21st century. Another reason is this one over here. George Lucas, I do believe you know who he is. If you don't, I'm sure Carlos is going to tell you pretty well who this guy is. But he says that visual communication is really important in education. And he says that one of the advantages of thinking about visual communication is that you are going to learn to tell stories better. You are going to learn to to ask questions better. You are going to persuade people better. You are going to sell your idea better by using visual communication. So when I'm talking about visual communication, I am giving away one of the tips that I'm going to give you in this in this presentation, how important image is going to be in these types of presentation. So taking into account all these, guys, design matters. It is really important for anybody who wants to make a professional presentation. And for us teachers and your students, that is really important. So at this point, you might be asking, okay, but what on earth is Death by PowerPoint? Why did you name your presentation that way? Okay, well, let's have a look at this slide. And I'm going to give you a minute. Carlos can help me here. What I want you to do is to have a look at this slide and tell me what you like about it. I'm going to repeat again. I'm going to give you a minute. Have a look at this slide and tell me what you like about it. Okay.
Consuelo, what do you like about it?
Maybe blue color and water.
Color. Okay, great. The color. What else? What else do you like about this presentation?
Anybody else? Okay, color again.
Color again. Okay, yes.
Huh?
Any other thing you like about it?
Okay. The one of our teachers here mentioned that she likes the contrast between the letters and the background.
Okay, the contrast between the letters and the background. That's really interesting. Anything else?
Okay, they like the image of the sea, the clouds, the
Okay.
water.
What about you, Carlos?
Me?
Yeah, what do you like about this slide?
I don't like it.
Why you don't like it?
Well, I don't like the fonts that say the cognitive style of PowerPoint.
Uh-huh.
Looks like childish to
Uh-huh.
me.
Okay.
But, well, I'm very old-fashioned anyway.
Okay.
And okay, so someone is saying that a negative aspect is it has too many words for a slide.
Okay. Okay.
And you know, in this the right corner is hard to read.
Okay. Okay. Great. So I agree with Carlos. I don't like this slide either. I'm going to tell you why. Number one, the title, the font we are using there is not only childish, but it is too ornamented for this slide and the background we are using. Another thing is that the characters of this title are way too
Miguel? Hi.
Don Luis.
Okay, back again, sorry. A technical problem. And I do believe it's related to connectivity and the camera that I'm using. Okay, so back again, and I do believe you're all
Hi,
listening to me,
welcome
right?
back.
No, yeah, I'm alive. Okay, so I was telling you, it's important if I'm seeing all this thing here. Okay. So I was telling you that number one, this is not right. It is ornamented. Characters are way too close. Another reason is the type of font for this content. It is Comic Sans. Not a very good idea to use it. Not only because it is childish, but it is not a good font for an academic presentation, for example. Another reason is that the lines are too close. Another reason is the name of the person here. As you can see, it gets lost on this image over here, the C, because it's too white, and the font is white as well. So that's not a very good idea to use. Also, the quantity of text used on the slide, and if on top of that, the speaker reads aloud the presentation, that's terrible, that's worse. Another reason is this theme or background. It is not a good idea to use it, right? This is the default theme you get from PowerPoint. So what you're gonna do then? What you're gonna do instead? I'm gonna tell you in a minute. So what I'm describing here is known as part of it, is known as death by PowerPoint. So we have to be careful when we are designing our presentation, and we have to think about the font. We have to think about the distance between the lines. We have to think about the background that we are using. Because if you don't, what you are telling your audience is that you don't know how to use, that you're a poor user of PowerPoint software.
Miguel?
Are you listening to me?
Yes. But could you please stand in front of the camera? I mean, we can see your earphone, but not your face.
Oh no, but that's okay. Don't worry about my face. I want you to be. The most important thing is the presentation. If you can see the presentation, don't worry about my face. That's not important.
Okay.
What's important is the presentation. Okay. Okay. So I was telling you that death by when you do all these, what you are telling the audience is that you are doing a poor use of presentation software, presentation tools. And also you are telling the audience that you depend on technology instead of using technology to enhance your presentation. There are some people, for example, when they use graphics, especially when you are defending a thesis or giving, yes, a presentation where you are sharing results and you use graphics, the graphics are full of information. And that's a terrible thing to do because that's going to distract the audience. The audience is going to get bored, fatigued by getting all this information from one slide. So I'm talking about information overload. So we have to be careful when we design the slide and the quantity of information that we are going to be added to the slide. Another important thing is that when you do this, you disconnect yourself from the audience, emotionally speaking. And emotion is an important part of designing and delivering a presentation, right? So that's going to be really important. Now, the next question is, who coined this phrase, death by PowerPoint? It was Angela Gardner. And she coined this phrase because she was worried a lot about the use, the way people were using PowerPoint presentation and the quantity of information that they were adding to all their slides, and on top of that, reading out loud each of the slides. People like Edward Tufte, like Carl Yuga and Wright, they agree with her, and they believed that the presenter was using PowerPoint as a prop for making up for their poor skills as speakers. So whenever you are going to design a presentation, you have to think basically, number one, on the quantity of text that you're going to use, the fonts that you're going to use, for example, animations, how you're going to use it, clip art, are you going to use it? Should you use it, especially in an academic context? So there are different elements that PowerPoint provides to you that you have to be careful with to avoid this. Death by PowerPoint, PowerPoint poisoning, PowerPoint hell. And when that happens, that's the reaction that you are going to get. People are going to get bored. People are going to feel fatigued of listening to you reading a slide, and they're asking themselves, well, if you are going to read the slide, why don't you send it to me by email? I will read the presentation, and then we can have another session, and we are going to talk about whatever it is that you want me to learn. So we have to avoid at all costs death by PowerPoint. Now, before we start, or I start sharing the tips on the things that you have to take into account to design your presentation, keep in mind that this is an important notion. When you are going to design a presentation, try to avoid death by PowerPoint. So how you are going to do that? Okay, so right now, I'm going to share with you some tips on how to design your presentation to avoid death by PowerPoint. What you should do, what you shouldn't do. So I'm going to start with information. What happens with information? What do teachers generally do? This is what they do. For example, if they are going to talk about types of libraries, they are going to add all that information on a slide. It doesn't matter which background they're going to use. They add all that information. So you have to try to avoid using way too much information on a slide. Another thing, have a look at this graphics. It's got lots of information. Have a look at this one over here. It's got a title, it's got the bars are identified, there is a paragraph below the graphic. That's way too much information for a graphic or even a chart in a presentation. Have a look at this one. This one is a terrible graphic to share some type of information. It's really confusing and people are not going to pay attention to you. Or it is going to be really difficult for people to pay attention to you because they're going to be listening to you and trying to understand the image that you are sharing with them, in this case, this graphic. So what you should do, your presentation should be simple and relevant, or simple but relevant. So we have to be careful here when we are trying to understand this notion of simplicity. It's got to be relevant. So have a look at this image, for example, here. I can use this image to talk about greetings. And the only thing I've got here is a guy on the right for me and hello on the left. And from this image, I can start talking about greetings, what they are, why people greet, different ways of greetings, just by using this slide. Why? Because I am the expert. I am the one who's going to explain, to define, to illustrate whatever it is I'm showing to my audience in a certain slide. So to make things simple, I'm going to give you examples. Have a look at this text again. How can I make this text simple? Well, I can simply use the titles for the libraries: academic, public, school, special libraries. The rest of the content, I am responsible for describing, for identifying, for illustrating what these libraries are. So I can design a slide like this one, which is a typical kind of this slide that teachers may design. I've got an image on the left, types of libraries, and then the list or types of libraries that I'm going to talk about. And I don't know if you can notice that the color of the different types of libraries are different. One has got darker brown, the other one has lighter brown. And that's one way to present a list on a slide like this one. But there is a better way. Instead of doing this, you can design different slides for each of the points that you are going to try to make for types of libraries. For example, have a look at this image. This image, I'm going to use it first to make an introduction on types of libraries. Anybody who sees this image, especially a librarian or an archivist, they are going to feel emotionally connected with the image and the topic that I'm going to be talking about. Once I've done my introduction, I will start talking about each type of library. So I will go with academic library, one slide, and one type of library. Then public library, then school library, and then special library. And notice how I'm using images here. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So I'm using one slide, one phrase, and the content, I am responsible for developing it. And I'm not depending on the technology. I am using the technology to enhance the content I'm developing. This is another way. This is another example. You can use a smaller image and the name, in this case, of the type of library that you're going to talk about. Another way is this one. Big font types of libraries, and then each of the libraries here. Now, you have to be careful here. You have no names here. So you will have to describe exactly where each type of library is, on the right, on the left, on the top, on the bottom, so people can follow you. Or you can do it like this. Again, big fonts for the topic that I'm going to talk about, images, and just keywords to identify types of libraries, and I'm going to develop the content for it. What about graphics or charts? Well, this one is not a very good idea to use. Let's try to edit a little bit this graph, and this is what we are going to get. Notice the difference between this graphic and this one over here. There's a lot of difference. The title has been reduced, as you can notice here. The names or the tags for each of the bars, they have been reduced as well to 1 or 2 words, most of them. So it looks nicer, it looks neat to the eye. And notice that the paragraph was also eliminated. So this graphic is going to be more interesting and nice to the eye, and people are going to be paying attention to you because you're going to be the one explaining the whole thing. This one is also a very nice graphic. Notice how simple it is. And all you have to do is, in this case, to talk about our hourly search activity. But you are responsible for developing the content, not the slide. This is another example of a very nice graphic, right? Notice the bars, names of the bars, and it is very simple. Now, before I start talking about clip art, keep in mind information. Information should be simple and relevant. And by simple, use phrases, keywords. You can also use quotes, for example. I'm going to give you examples later on. But the information should be reduced. Do not use paragraph and fill the whole slide with content. Be careful. Just simple and lots of images with it. Now, what about clip art? Clip art is something you shouldn't use. And for some reason, most teachers from primary school, secondary school, and university, they keep on using clip arts. What's wrong with them? That most clip arts are not related to the content that you are teaching. It is difficult to relate clip arts to the content that you are teaching. It is not only that they might be childish, although if you're from primary school, you're going to say, but well, they are cartoons and drawings and stuff like that. But sometimes they are not related to the content. I'm going to give you an example. Let's take the cow, and you want to talk about dairy production. And especially you want to talk about struggling dairy production. How come talking about struggling is going to be related to add the image of a cow there? There is no connection. So it is really difficult to connect content with clip arts. So please try to avoid clip arts. Okay, I'm going to recap again. Information, simple and relevant. Try to avoid clip arts in your presentations as much as you can. What can you use instead of clip arts? Images. There are images everywhere. So you can make use of them to illustrate whatever you want to talk about in your presentations. Have a look at this image. It is a really nice image. But you have to take into account that they must be high resolution images. They cannot be pixelated or blurred images. They have to be high resolution images. What else do you have to take into account about images? And it is something educators don't pay attention to it. Copyright. Sometimes we forget that the image we are using is not ours, and we use it. And we don't know that when the image is all rights reserved, it's illegal to use them. So we have to try to avoid all rights reserved images, because you can run into trouble if the creator of the image noticed that you were using it and you didn't ask for permission. You didn't ask him or her to use her or his image. One way to use images that are not yours, or videos or audio, is fair use. This is North American copyright. And this fair use has to do with the possibility of using part of the content for a presentation or for educational material. But you can only use part of it. You cannot use the whole thing. So it's really complicated, especially if you're going to use images, to use fair use. So the best way to use images is Creative Commons images. And the question is, what are they? Well, they are different licenses that we can use to adapt images or to use images for our presentations without running into risk of getting an email from a creator telling us to remove the image from a presentation or anywhere else online. Now, let me show you this interesting infographic. There's a lot of information here. So I'm going to concentrate on license types. These are the different licenses that you have for Creative Commons. So the most important ones are this one over here, share alike. This share alike means that if you are using my image and it's got a license, you have to use the same license for the image that you are going to use, especially if you are going to adapt it. No derivatives means that you cannot adapt my image. You can use it, but do not change the image. Public domains are images that everybody shares online, photographers and all that, or very old images, let's say images from the 19th century. So you can use them without any problem. Then you have non-commercial images, of course, images that you are going to use and you are not going to sell or distribute. And, well, all of them are related to non-commercial images. But to understand this better, I'm going to give you an example on the following. See, so this is in the case that you need to acknowledge who the creator is. In a minute, I'm going to show you how to find images which has got this license. But before I do that, I want to show you how you can create your own license for your images. Because now we can use our camera or the smartphone or a digital camera to take pictures. So notice how easy it is to protect your very own pictures if you want to use them for a presentation. For example, here, all you've got to do is to answer questions. Allow adaptations of your work? Yes? No. When I choose no, notice how the license changes, okay? This is the attribution, okay? So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to choose yes, and notice how the attribution changes, right? If I choose this one, notice again how the attribution changes. The other question is, which is the other question, and that's it. See, it's very easy to use. This one over here, allow commercial uses of work. If I click here, no, notice how the license changes here, okay? So what I'm going to get as a result is the license. This is the license that I can use for my images, for my PowerPoint presentations, for videos, to protect my work. You are going to copy this and also the image. If you want to share your images or presentations in a blog or a wiki, all you've got to do is to copy this code over here and paste it on your blog or wiki. So what I'm showing you here is that you can also protect your very own work. Now, what if I want to find images for my presentation and I want to use Creative Commons images? Well, I do recommend you to go to Comfide. Comfide is an interesting website, and that's the one I use to find most of my images. So I'm going to type here something like, let me click here, instead of love, I'm going to type cat and see how many images of cats I am going to get for my presentations. See, keep in mind what I've been telling you, that the visual part is important more than the quantity of text that you are going to use on a slide. So for example, if I click on this image over here, let's click on this one over here, notice what I'm going to get. See, I'm going to get the image over here. I'm going to get here different sizes. This is the one you want for high resolution images. And here we have the license that you need to take into account for your images. Now, before I show you this in detail and how to create attribution for an image, let me show you the following here. These images over here in Comfide, you shouldn't use. Why? Because they are stock photos and they have a watermark. You should use all the images below the dotted line. You can use all these images. And you can use more. You can use all these images. Okay? If I click here, more images, the same thing. You are not going to use this one here. You are going to use these images here. Okay? So let's go back to the image I clicked on, which is this image over here. And this is what you are going to need to copy to attribute the image you are going to be using. I'm going to click here on the image, and you are going to copy, in this case, the name of the creator. I'm going to copy this image, and I'm going to open my blog, and I'm going to paste it there. Okay, and now I'm going to copy right here the license, which is going to be important for me. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it here. Okay, and I do recommend you also to copy. Let me go back to the image here. Oops, not that one. And I also recommend you to copy the URL in case you want to use the image again, and for some reason you don't know where it is on internet. So you are going to copy the URL as well. If you want, you can.
Mike,
yeah?
We lost your share screen.
Uh-oh. Wait a little bit. Let me see where it is. Okay, it's here. Okay, now you are saying it again?
Yes, right there.
Okay, so I was telling you that you are going to save this information because you are going to need it to attribute your image. I'm going to give you an example in a minute, what you're going to do with this. You can also copy it and paste it on Word if you prefer Word to keep track of all the images you are using for your presentation. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation here. And I was right here. This one over here. Okay. And I should paste it here. I'm going to paste it. Okay, what I'm going to do is the following. See, so if you want to attribute the image, this is what you're going to do. You are going to write below the image, photography, the name of the author, and the attribution. Or photography, name of the author, and just this information here. This is equivalent to all this over here, okay? Another way is by typing photo by Nicholas Tikhonov, sorry. This is the name of the photographer. And over here, the attribution, or this way over here. Let me give you an example. I'm going to show you how I attribute the image on PowerPoint. So I'm going to add this space here. And I'm going to go back to this image here. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to here, or let me do it right here. Okay, I'm going to choose the original image, and I'm going to download it. And I'm going to show you how I do it, so it's going to be clearer for you, because I know I'm giving you a lot of information, and your head is going to explode. Okay, so here, again, I think my computer is going to restart. Oh, no, great. Okay, great. So image here, and I'm going to go to download. The image is here. Okay, so this is my image over here. Now, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go back to this image, and I'm going to copy this license here, okay? This attribution here. And I'm going to paste it here, okay? And what I'm going to do is to change the color, okay? So it's going to look better. And I'm going to go back to this information I've got here. I copy it, and I paste it here. And as you can see, we've got the image here and the attribution for the image. And I'm telling people that this is not my image and that I'm respecting the creator of this image. This is going to be important. If you want to be taken as a serious professional, if you want to be respected as a professional, as an educator, it's as important for you to attribute, to acknowledge who was the creator of the image that you are using. For some reason, in Latin America, we do not pay attention to this. But when you start working with colleagues from around the world, you are going to see how important it is. And they are going even to ask you, is that your image? So it is important as an educator, not only to learn how to do that for our presentations, but train our students to do that. And remember that it is part of the digital skills that we need to develop, okay? So I'm going to summarize again. Images, they have to be high quality images. You have to attribute the image. You have to acknowledge the creator of the image. And that's going to be an important step for designing these types of presentations. There are some other sites that you can use to download Creative Commons. There is Stock Exchange, there is Morguefile, there is Flickr. So from those sites, you can also find Creative Commons images. Another type of image that you can use are called public domain images. These images are easy to use because all you need to do is to choose the image. Of course, you will have to attribute the image, but it is way much easier than Creative Commons images. I'm going to give you an example. Let's go to this site over here, which is Pixabay. Remember that I told you that public domain images are very old photographs that are available online, or photographers who like to share the images without needing a special license. So I'm going to type here dog. And as you can see, there are lots of images here that I can use. Do not use these images here. They have a watermark. You shouldn't use them, but you can use these images here. I'm going to click on this dog over here. What I'm going to do is to click here, I download the image, and then I add the attribution, which is the attribution, the name of the author, which is here, okay, and the public domain license. So that's all you're going to do. But you need to do that. Even if they are free and there is no problem with licensing, it's important for you to acknowledge the author and that it is a public domain image. That's going to be really important. There is this site, which is called Gratisography, which is a really interesting site created by this guy over here, Ryan Maguire. And he's a photographer, and he is sharing his pictures online. And as you will see in a minute, I'm going to close some sites here. Okay, so this is the website of Ryan Maguire, and the advantage of using this site is that it is free of copyright restrictions. So I'm going to type here horse. And in a minute, we are going to have some images there. Now, the disadvantage of this site is that it doesn't have that many images. Oh, it's thinking. Oh, it's here. Sorry. So here we've got 1, 2, 3 images related to horses. You can use them. And all you have to do is to say adapted from Ryan Maguire, or image by Ryan Maguire, or photography. That's all you have to do. But you always have to acknowledge the creator of the image, right? So this is also an interesting site that you can visit. Okay. So before we go to backgrounds, I'm going to summarize again images, high quality images. You have to think about license, copyright. You have to acknowledge the author. That means attributing the image. You can use public domain images, which are very easy to use, or sites like the last one I showed you, where you're going to find photograph. You're not going to have any legal problems by using the images of this photographer. But the most important thing is that you have to identify who the creator is. So far, I have talked about information, simple and relevant. I have talked about clip arts, try to avoid clip arts, images, high resolution images, and you have to think about copyright. Background. Background is also an important thing you will have to take into account. Have a look at this beautiful background for a presentation. Maybe when you're talking about street or traffic or whatever, it's an amazing image. And I'm sure that you are going to create an impact on the audience. So have a look at this image over here. Images that are small are not advisable to use, especially if you're going to use just one image to talk about a single topic. So you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do this either. This is typical in most presentations. You're going to see that they use this image, which is really small. They enlarge the image. And what happens, the quality of the image changes. It gets lost. And also, it gets a little bit blurred when you see the image. This is something you shouldn't do. It can also get a little bit pixelated. So you should avoid doing this. If the image, for some reason, is not the size of the slide, well, it doesn't matter if you get a background like the one you're seeing, a white background. That is not a problem. It looks nice. If we think about graphic design, style, and things like that. So keep the image the natural size it's got. Do not enlarge, stretch the image. It doesn't look nice. So a white background is always going to be safe. You don't have to worry about anything. A black background is also going to be safe. You can use it. Those are backgrounds that are not complicated for an image like this one, right? Another background could be choosing the color of one of the elements of the image. In this case, I chose the color of the book and use it as a background, and it also looks really nice to the eye. So that's another thing that you can do to make it look nicer. Now, this is something you shouldn't do. Do not use bright colors and colors that are not related to the image, because that's not going to be nice to the eye. So avoid bright colors as a background, okay? Let me go to the next slide. For some reason, it is changing. Okay. Background. For some reason, some people use a large image as a background, and on top of the image, they add other images or photographs. Don't do that. Avoid doing that. Not good. Don't do this either. Background as an image, photograph on top of the image, and then you add text. Confusing, not good for the audience. They are not going to be paying attention to you because they are trying to understand what you've got on that slide. So avoid doing this. So background, remember that if the image does not fit the whole slide, it doesn't matter if it keeps a background. I do recommend white and black background, or you can play a little bit with the colors that you are going to find on the image as a background, okay? What about legible text? And we were talking about it at the very beginning of the presentation. This is not good. So what are you going to do to avoid this? Theme or background like this one, and the color of the fonts over here. Not good. So we will have to go back to primary school and high school and remember a little bit the color wheel. This is going to be a good start. Here we've got 12 colors, primary colors, secondary colors, and tertiary colors. And those are the colors that we're going to use to try to use on backgrounds, especially when we are using fonts. The color of the fonts and the background. Now, keep in mind that, for example, if I choose this color, green, and I add white, I'm going to make it lighter. If I add black, I'm going to make it darker. So that's possible to do. I can use shades of color for the color of the font for a certain background. For example, have a look at this, monochromatic colors. That's something I can use for an image like this one. The background is black, but I'm choosing the color of the tongue here, right? To write this title over here, Childhood Fears. So I can play it if I want a little bit with different shades of red, and I'm going to choose the one I like. So that's one safe way of using color for fonts and the background that I've chosen, of course. Another way is by using analog colors. What's that? Analog color. Well, I'm going to give you an example. If red is the color that I'm going to choose, I am going to place myself here on the color wheel, and I'm going to choose the color next to it. In this case, it's a purplish color, and that's the one that I'm going to choose. Or I can use this one over here, orange, which is the color next to the main color I want to contrast with. So if I choose this one, this is the way it is going to look in my presentation, Childhood Fears, and it looks really nice. Another way, or another possibility, is complementary colors. What's that? Well, color wheel again. If I'm choosing red because of the tongue here, I'm going to choose the color opposite to it. In this case, is green. So this is the way it is going to look on my presentation, Childhood Fears. And notice that it is legible and it looks nice on this background. So this is one thing that we will have to take into account. The color of the font and the background that we are using, and we can use the color wheel as a reference to do that. Here's an example. Have a look at this slide and the image. It's got lots of colors. So what I did was the following. To help the audience read diversity, I added a shape. And I chose the blue color because of the blue that I've got right here on this image. And the color for the font is the complementary color for blue. In this case, is an orange, a beige kind of color. So have a look how nice it looks. And I'm sure that people are going to be able to read diversity and the image and the message that I'm trying to convey by using this image and by using just one word and playing a little bit with colors. When I do that, I'm also playing with emotions, okay, that people are going to identify with. Okay, so I'm going to recap color and fonts. Keep in mind that when you are using backgrounds like this one, especially backgrounds that are going to fill the whole slide, you have to be careful on the colors that you are going to choose for your fonts, okay? So you can think about the color wheel, and that's going to help you choose the most appropriate color. Fonts. What about fonts? Okay, so have a look at this. Carlos, you're going to help me here and ask people, well, they're listening to me. And we've got several fonts here. Which fonts do you think we should use for presentations, especially for PowerPoint?
So people, which fonts do you think are best for your presentations? Okay, we have a vote for Comic Sans, Tahoma,
Which one? Tahoma.
Times New Roman.
Okay.
Any other? 2 votes for Comic Sans. Another vote for Times New Roman. Any other? So we mentioned Tahoma, Times New Roman, and Comic Sans, right?
Okay.
Another?
Let's see which ones we should use.
Someone mentioned Verdana.
Verdana. Okay. Let's see which are the fonts that you should use from this list. You should only use Helvetica, Tahoma, Sans Serif, Arial, and Verdana. Courier and Times New Romans are a little bit ornamented, so they are not good for presentations. And Comic Sans, some people tend to believe that they are a bit boring and a bit childish. And there are some other reasons for not using Comic Sans. Let's imagine that you are going to make a presentation about comic books. Okay, in that case, Comic Sans is okay. Or it is a conversation between 2 characters, for example, primary school teachers. That might be okay. But if you are going to make a presentation about biology, for example, or I don't know, history, it is better to use Helvetica or Tahoma or Sans Serif or Arial or Verdana, but not Comic Sans. For some reason, we tend to use that one because it used to be a popular font for presentations, but not anymore. So be careful when using Comic Sans. Now, which size we should use for presentations? 30 on. The bigger, the better. Okay? Not smaller than 30. So keep that in mind. Then the size of the font should be big. And I'm going to repeat again. The bigger, the better. Okay? Now, what else I'm going to tell you? Okay. What about if you want to make a presentation and you want to spice up a little bit that presentation? You want to add a different font. You can do it. In fact, you can use about 3 different fonts for a presentation, no more than that. If you use more fonts, more than 3 fonts, different fonts in your presentation, it is not going to look nice. So it's important to use no more than 3 different fonts. But if you want to do something different in your presentation because you're bored of using Helvetica and any other type of fonts, so you can go to this site, the font. And from here, I'm going to use the English version. You are going to be able to download different types of interesting fonts. You can also use, by the way, I'm going to take Sans Serif family of fonts. I'm going to click here, Sans Serif. And notice the different type of fonts that you can use only for Sans Serif. So for example, for your presentation, you can use this one, Bibas, Caviar, and Lemon. You can use them for your presentation, and it's going to make the presentation more interesting, okay? So remember, no more than 3 different fonts for your presentation. It is easy to download these fonts and add them to your computer. Okay, so let's go back here. So that's in the case that you want to spice up a little bit your presentation. Now, let's have a look at this. Sometimes we can use quotes in our presentations. Here's a quote by Carter Woodson. And notice that I'm using capital letters. When the quote is short, I can use capital letters. But when the quote is longer, it is not advisable to use capital letters. Why? Because it can be confusing
and distracting for the audience because of the size of the font, okay? So avoid capital letters when you are using longer text on your slide. When it is short, go ahead, you can use capital letters. Now, what happens if you want to use this one? What are you going to use? Well, use sentence case. You have your capital letter and the rest of the information lowercase letter. As simple as that, right? So notice the difference between this and the difference between this. This one looks nicer to the eye, right? And for the audience, it's going to be really, really good. So take that into account. Another thing that you're going to take into account is if you're going to spice up your presentation and you're going to use a non-traditional font, be careful. Because notice here, let the music play. There is a problem here. And the problem here is that the L and E, for example, and the L and A are way too close. And that can be confusing for the audience. And I'm talking about the brain. When the brain is getting that information, it is going to be confusing. So what you should do is this. You have to separate a little bit the characters. Now, the question is how you are going to do that. How you are going to separate the space between characters. It's very easy. And by the way, that's called kerning. So if you want to kern letters or characters, this is the way you're going to do it. In PowerPoint, you are going to go to fonts or fuentes in español, in Spanish, and you are going to go to this function here, and you are going to be able to separate the characters choosing from a menu. If you want to do it manually, you are going to click here, and you are going to do that manually, okay? So that's something you have to take into account. What else you have to take into account when we are talking about fonts? Have a look at this and have a look at this. You shouldn't do this. Now, what happens here? Notice that academic, public, school, and special are way too close. That's not a good idea. You shouldn't do this. And in this case over here, notice that academic, public, school, and special are there separated way too much. So the best way is to try to leave a space, a decent space, so the text can breathe. And that's really important. And that's called leading. So try to leave a decent space between the lines. So it is also going to be good to the eye, nice to the eye, and it is not going to be confusing. How do you do that on PowerPoint? Well, once again, you're going to go to paragraph, this is párrafo in Spanish. And to do this, you are going to click on this over here, and you're going to get a menu, and you're going to use that menu to separate the lines. Or you can go to, or you can go right here, click on this arrow over here, and you can do that manually. Okay? Okay. So before we go to alignment and composition, as you can see, I've told you a lot about information and cliparts and images. And I've talked about fonts and colors, and also the type of font that you are supposed to use, and you have to take into account apart from the type. You have to take into account if it is uppercase, if it is lowercase, if it is sentence case. So bear with me, guys, because it's a lot of information, but it is really interesting and important for designing our presentations. Okay, another thing that I'm going to talk about is alignment and composition. This notion is really easy. What's that? It's what you're seeing there on that image, which represents very well this notion. Okay, have a look at this thing over here. What's wrong here? Can you tell me very quickly what's wrong here?
Some people say that the image.
But what's wrong with the image?
What's wrong with the image? Okay, the white frame.
The white, exactly, the white space surrounding the logo. That's wrong, because have a look at this off-putting theme or background, which is not really nice. And on top of that, you add a logo and it's surrounded by white. Do you know how to solve this? Is there a way to solve this?
Does anybody know the answer? Yep.
How?
There's an option that you can put in transparent the background of the image.
Mhm. Pretty good. Yeah, that's right. Very smart. Yes, and how you do that, I'm going to tell you how to do that in a minute. Very good. Yes. You need to make the white background become transparent. And that's something that you can do using an image editor. But before we get there, a simple solution is this one. Well, use a white background, and the problem is solved. If you don't know how to delete the white background, well, use a white background for that image, and you solve the problem. And white and black are the safest background for us when designing this type of presentation. So that's something you can do. But if you use an image editor with it, you can delete the white background and save it as PNG. That way, the background is going to become transparent, and you can use it then on any slide, and it doesn't matter, for example, which color it's got. See, I deleted the white background, save it as PNG, and now I can use it on any background, on an image, photograph, or a background like this one, right? So that's going to be important, and keep in mind your audience. That's what's important, because that's going to be distracting for them. Another thing you have to take into account is the way you organize the images on the slide. There is one. Which problems do you see here, very quickly?
Which problems? Too many images?
Okay, well, but that's not really the problem, that there are too many images. Because let's imagine you are planning an activity, and you need to use a couple of images for that activity, and you don't want to separate the images, pedagogically speaking. So, but is there any other problem?
Someone mentioned too much information. Another teacher here mentioned that the shapes aren't all the same. Some are square.
Good. Composition there. Yeah, good. We're talking about composition. So one thing is the size of the images. Number two, once again, the white background and the background we're using for these images, which is this off-putting blue sea, which we can get by default on PowerPoint. Another problem is these over here, Smart Word. I think it's called Smart Word. Famous librarians, do not use Smart Art. That's the name of the function in PowerPoint. For some reason, it's typical in primary and high school to use this Smart Art, okay, from PowerPoint. It doesn't look nice. It is not really academic. It is not very professional. So try to avoid Smart Art. How you should compose this presentation? Well, this way. Have a look. I have, yes, several images, but notice that they are, the composition is nice. Below the images, I've got the names, and I used a white background, which is a safe way to use images that has got a white background as well. Now, have a look at this. What's wrong here? Do you like this?
No.
Can I do this? What's wrong here?
Because the images get blurry?
No, the images are the same. But see that you notice that the images are blurry when I do this, even though the images are the same. Any other answer?
The animation, the colors.
The colors are the same. The colors do not change.
That they are in different positions.
That's right, alignment. Now the question is, why on earth we are going to do this? And you are going to find presentations from teachers and students that they do this, that they don't take into account the alignment. There is no reason for doing this, no reason at all. So you have to be careful when you do that. Let me show you what you should do. I hope that I can do that. Okay, so let me go to that slide very quickly. Okay, it's over here, it's here. See what I'm gonna do. It's there, great. I'm going to get rid of this thing over here. Okay, and what I'm gonna do is that I'm going to copy this very quickly. Okay, and I'm going to paste it here, right? I'm going to add another one, and I'm going to do this. And I'm going to paste it here. And what I'm gonna do is here, I'm going to, not here, I'm going to delete this and this. And let's see what's going to happen now. Okay. Oh, I added another one. Okay, right here, here, okay. So notice what happens now. See? See how smooth now the change from one slide to the other is? I mean, you don't see the images moving, and there's no need for it to happen in this type of slide, right? Because what you are trying to do, for example, is instead of giving the answer, you are going to start asking students, can you identify the different librarians? Do you know them? And you can get the information from the students or the audience. And to show the answer, so then you're gonna use another slide, and it looks like a nice transition from one slide to the other. Why? Because we have taken into account alignment. So keep in mind that we have to be careful with alignment and composition whenever we are designing our slides as well. Themes, and I have talked about this. Have a look at that beautiful theme. That's a picture, that's an image, and I can use it for any type of content, maybe a content related to environment and stuff like that. So what do people do all the time? They go to PowerPoint, they choose design, and from there they use a theme. Of course, it is very easy. You don't have to worry about colors and design, etc., and you go and choose a theme. And that's disrespecting your audience. Your audience is going to respect the fact that you have taken the time to design your very own theme. So notice, this is very typical, this theme. This one is very typical as well. This one in primary and high school, very typical. This one is, especially at the university, you are going to see lots of teachers using this theme because it's easy. But what you should do is to create, to design your very own theme. I designed this theme for a course I was given, I gave in 2013, podcasting for the ESL/EFL classroom, and I designed my very own thing. And the only thing I used was a picture. You can see the picture here and the attribution here. And also I use shapes from PowerPoint, and I created this slide here. It was very easy to do. And I kept the same design for the rest of the slides. This is another one I designed for a presentation in Glasgow, and I tried to keep more or less the colors and all that. I'm gonna show you this presentation in a minute, the whole presentation, so you will see what I did. This is another example of a background or theme, and notice how nice it is on the colors. Well, Gar Reynolds, he kept the same background for the whole or for most part of the presentation, and it is really, really nice. He didn't use themes that you can get by default from PowerPoint. So be careful when you're using themes. Try to design your very own theme. Bullet points. Something that teachers and students love, and this is something you will have to try to avoid. It is distracting, and it is telling people that you didn't take the time to learn the content of your presentation well. It's in Spanish, by the way, and I'm going to read it on purpose because this is what most people do when they use bullet point or viñetas. Si las viñetas no matan, sí, las viñetas no matan, pero distraen y sirven de muleta para el orador pobre que no sabe cómo enfocarse en puntos específicos y más relevantes de su presentación. Por favor, evite las viñetas. And it is true. Whenever you are using bullet points, what you do is basically, number one, bullet points are difficult to remember, and there is research about it. What you are doing is basically reading and listening, and the audience will have to multitask. There is a psychologist I read a long time ago, and she says that we should avoid this type of bullet points. It is not good for our brain. Our brain is not going to be able to remember all the information you are given when you use bullet points. points. So what can you use instead? That's your question. Because for some reason, we want to keep on using bullet points because we find them useful. But they are not really useful for presentations. You can do this, something like this. This is the way I started my presentation. Notice, instead of using bullet points, shapes, and keywords to talk about the content of my presentation. That's one way, very simple. Another thing that you can do is, instead of using bullet points, and I told you this at the beginning, use different slides per point. So types of libraries, academic library, public library, school library, special library. That's one way of avoiding bullet points. Another way is the following. PowerPoint has got Smart Art, and that's a function for you to create lists. But they are nicer, okay? And it's more advisable than using the traditional bullet points. I'm going to give you an example. From this Smart Art, I chose this one over here, the first one. And this is what I did. And notice how nice it looks. Large fonts for the title of the slide, types of libraries. And then you can see small images here and the names of the different libraries. And what I'm going to do is to talk about them. That's my responsibility. Another way to avoid bullet points is to increase the size of the circles and the size of the numbers, and then you use lines between the different points and have a look and notice how different it looks. It looks much nicer, and you're helping the audience's brain to get that information that you want to share with them. Another way is by using icons. Iconize your information. So you can find icons that are related to your points, and that way you're going to use a slide and use something that's close to bullet points, but they are not. Okay, so try as much as you can to avoid bullet points as well as animations. It is terrible when you are listening to a speaker and he's using a lot of animation. I'm going to give you an example. Academic, and then an arrow, public and a different animation, and then schools, another animation, and then special and another animation. That is distracting, and it is not a good thing, once again, for the brain, the poor brain of your audience that is getting all this information, and you are using animation. You can use it, but not that frequently, not that much during your presentation. The one I prefer is this one. Have a look at this, a transition. And that is a type of animation, but it's a simple transition. That's the one I use in most of my presentations. I do not use animation. I rarely use it unless it is necessary, okay? So try to avoid animation. Okay, so before we go to principles, I've been talking about a lot of things that you have to take into account. Information, fonts, clip art, images, animations, composition and alignment, and bullet points. Those are the main things that you have to take into account. There is more, and we can spend days talking about the different things that we need to take into account. And you might be saying, but that's a lot of things to do. People, when you get used to all these things, it is easier for you. It is going to be part of the things that you do when you design a presentation. Remember that the more you practice, the easier things are going to get, right? Okay, now let's have a look at principles. What do you have to take into account in connection to principles? Principles for presentation. And I'm going to organize my whole thing right now. Okay, so you have to take into account the following. When you are going to deliver your presentation, design and deliver your presentation, you have to take into account significance, structure, simplicity, and rehearsal. Those are key things for working on your presentation. Let's have a look at significance. Why on earth I'm making this presentation? Do I want to please my boss? Is it because I need to be promoted and I need to make a presentation? Why? Why on earth I am choosing this presentation? And the other thing is the topic. What kind of topic I'm going to choose to make this presentation? I have to like it. I have to know about it to make this presentation. And passion is going to be important. remember the following, and it is not me saying it. It is Alex, I think it is Alex something. I don't remember his last name right now. He's Russian. And he says, significance creates passion. Passion attracts attention, and attention leads to action. So whenever you are going to make a presentation, choose a presentation that you love, not that you like, a content, a topic that you love. So you are going to enjoy, and your audience is also going to enjoy that presentation. So that's going to be important, significance. Structure. How you are going to organize your presentation? Well, if you remember at the beginning of the presentation, I told you my presentation is going to be organized into introduction, tips, and principles. And that's what I'm doing, okay? But it's got to be convincing. It's got to be memorable. It's got to be scalable. By scalable, I mean the following. That is, this presentation can be adapted to different times. I mean, if you are going to make a 30-minute presentation, I can use the same presentation. If I'm going to make an hour presentation, I can use the same presentation for that event. So it's got to be easy to adapt depending on the time of the event in which you are going to present in. When I'm talking about memorable, what you have to do is the following. At the beginning, there should be an opening, like an anecdote or a video or an image. In my case, I talk about my personal reason for making this presentation and a lovely picture of my brother and myself, of course. Then you have to have a memorable closing as well. And between this memorable opening and closing, you are going to have all your arguments. Some people recommend that for each argument, you should develop no more than 3 or 4 points, right? That's to make the presentation interesting. Because if you add way too much information, once again, it is going to be difficult for the person's memory to remember everything. Okay, simplicity. And we have talked about this. Try as much as you can to have 1 point per slide. Try not to have that much information. Color, when you're using your fonts, when you're choosing your images, when you're using your background, that's going to be important. Fonts, the type of font that you're going to use, they shouldn't be that ornamented. They should be simple, nice, interesting fonts. And pictures. Pictures all the way the presentation. That's going to be the main thing. You are going to be talking through the image and the key phrases that you are going to choose. Rehearsal. For rehearsal is the feedback, and that's going to be important. For some reason, I do not understand why teachers do not rehearse before their presentation. I do remember a teacher telling me, oh, I don't rehearse, I don't practice at all, I don't need it, I know about the topic. And then the next day when she was making the presentation, it was a bit confusing because she was not following the right or an interesting order. So rehearsing is important because you can realize, I'm going to delete this slide, I don't need it, or I'm going to add this, or by chance I came across a new information, I can add it to the presentation. So that's important. Rehearsal. By feedback, I mean presenting the presentation to a colleague. He's going to listen to you and he's going to give you feedback. Or talk to yourself in front of the mirror. Why not? Or record your presentation. That's another way to get feedback. But this time the feedback is going to come from you. Room and equipment. Sometimes this is a bit difficult. For example, I don't know the room where you are. But this is important to know. It's important to know the room because of the light, for example. The lighting is important because the room is going to be using screen. So lighting is going to be really important. Also the equipment. The equipment is important because you have to become familiar with the laptop or the video beam that is going to be used. It's not the same your computer, your iPad, your smartphone than using someone else's equipment. So if you can, whenever you're going to participate, especially face-to-face session, try to check out the room. Try to check out the equipment in advance. Or what we were doing here, for example, before I make this presentation, there was a practice from the people from this university, and they were amazing, and it was really easy to do. And that's really important. Checklists. For all the points I have mentioned, try to keep a checklist. and make sure you have done all the things that have been mentioned, and especially in these principles. So those are general things that we have to take into account when we are making presentations. Okay, so far I gave you tips, I gave you some basic principles. Now, examples of speakers that you should follow. Well, you've got there Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and the last one is? Which one is the last one? Are you listening to me?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
We are.
So we've got here Steve Jobs, we've got Bill Gates, and the last one is?
Al Gore.
Exactly, Al Gore. And I do recommend you people to go to YouTube, and you're going to find them presenting their content, and they are amazing. And the way they use, well, they don't use PowerPoint, but they use different software which is similar to PowerPoint, but it's more or less the same thing. What you want to do is to listen to them, how they make their presentation, how they use the slides to make their presentation. Al Gore, his graphics are amazing, very nice, very simple, neat, and that's the way we should go, teachers and students. So I do recommend you to go to Google and listen to them. Or you can go to TED Talks. TED Talks is an amazing site where you're going to find I don't know how many presentations, and they can be an excellent model for you and your students. Not all of them are good, but not all of them. But there's a good number of presenters there that you can use as a model. One way to find the ones you need is type on Google TED Talks teaching ESL, EFL, and you're going to get a list of TED Talks that you can follow and imitate. We always need a role model. So go to TED Talks, and I'm sure that's going to help you have an idea on how to give a presentation. Oh, tools that you can use. There are several tools that you can use for making presentation. Keynote and Prezi, apart from PowerPoint, OpenOffice, Google, you can use them to make your presentations. The one that people like more, or I don't know if more than PowerPoint, but especially young people, they like it, is Prezi. It's an interesting tool. Some people don't like it because they say that they feel dizzy when the slides are moving or changing. I'm going to show you one in a minute, but it is not true. It is going to depend on the time you spend on the slide, of course, right? But it is an interesting tool to use, and I do recommend you to explore it if you can. SlideShare is a site for you to upload your presentation. Today or tomorrow, I'm going to upload this presentation, and I'm going to send it to Carlos to share it with you. So this is an excellent site to keep all your presentations, and one way to share them with colleagues or students. Okay, and right now I'm going to give you examples of presentations. So to do that, I'm going to do something we shouldn't do, but I'm going to do it because this is like a tutorial. And right here, I'm going to close this. I don't need it. Here, we've got some examples. I'm going to start with this one over here. Okay. So this is an example of a presentation, and you are going to see that these people are following all the things that I've been talking about to you. This is Seth Dickens. He makes amazing presentations. Notice how he uses the license, the Creative Commons license, to protect his work. And notice the background, notice the image, notice the red, and the red is from this doll here, where it looks like a doll. So it's red. See, and it looks nice. Have a look at the background as well. And notice just one single image, right? Notice the way he uses bullet points, big numbers, and then he just mentions 3 points, and he develops all those points from this slide. That is, he explains, defines, etc., or answer the questions there. Similar slide. Have a look at this one, just one single image, and then one title there. And he is going to talk about it, right? And you will have to listen to him. Another similar one, and the similar one, different title. Have a look at this image, and notice here the font that he uses, which is different from this one here, right? Another one, see, and this time is a quote again, and notice that he he uses sentence case, right? He didn't use uppercase in this slide. Another beautiful slide he uses to convey meaning, another one. And notice here that he's using here several sentences, but notice that he uses different fonts and different colors instead of using bullet points. Quite interesting, okay? So that's one example. Let me give you or show you another example. I think it's this one. This one is Gary. I'm not certain. No, this is another one which is really good. And this one is interesting because notice how simple the first slide is, the title of the presentation. And then there is a question here, very simple, black background, images here, and a text. No more than 2 lines. I do remember, but that's going to depend, that's debatable, that you can use no more than 3 lines on a slide, right? But it is not always true. It depends on how you use the text on the slide. So text again, and notice here how interesting that he emphasizes, he highlights part of the text by changing the color. That's pretty cool. And notice the background is white. So once again, he plays with color to highlight part of the text. Really, really nice. Okay, let's have a look at another one. And another one is this one, Gary Reynolds, if I remember well. And as I told you before, have a look at the background, how nice it is. Really peaceful as well. Very, very zen background. So notice here the title, What Inspires You About Japan. And have a look at the way he played a little bit with the text and all that there. Have a look at the image. And he uses the image and there is no text here. And he's going to talk about that, whatever it is that he says there. Another image. See, images here. He didn't use bullet points. He used 3 images and the name for each of the small images. And it goes like that. It's beautiful. Have a look at this quote over here. Notice that he used sentence case here. Really nice presentation. And what he's going to do here is that he's not really going to read the quote. He's going to use the quote as an excuse to develop a certain content. Really, really nice. Okay, I'm going to give you a presentation I designed on Prezi. And it's going to load. When you are going to design the presentation on Prezi, and when it's ready, you are going to be able to download the presentation from it, okay? And then you can use it, you can carry it anywhere. By the way, when you are going to save your presentation, guys, try to save it in different formats or devices. Say a flash drive, say a DVD, or you can also save your presentation on the cloud. Okay, so have a look at this presentation. This presentation is for a committee I belong to, and I provide support to students with disabilities in my school. So I want to talk about the presentation, and notice the nice movement there, and there's a circle here, and I start talking about this, and notice that I use a picture to explain why I started on this committee, and then another slide here. Notice the movement. Of course, I'm going to spend a certain time describing each of the images. I'm not going to do it here, but because I'm just showing you how it works. But it is a really nice way of also designing a presentation and talking about whatever it is that you want to talk for the audience. Okay, so it goes like that. That's not a really nice image. This one is a very good image. I don't know if we're going to see it here. A good image as well. That's my image. When you don't see the attribution, that's my image. This is a poster, this is a poster, and here's a video. Notice that I can add videos as well to Prezi. Okay. So that's Prezi, and is there any other? Okay, this is one I designed for. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We're running short of time.
Oh,
so-
this is the last thing. This is the examples.
Okay,
So, this is the last one that I'm going to show you.
great.
Okay. So this is the last one that I designed for a university here in Caracas. And notice again how I use images and bullet points. I'm not using bullet points at all, right? So Notice how simple it is to talk about inclusion in these.
Hello. Yeah, but I think it's the signal again.